Hey PTC, Eric here. Why would a good God allow evil to exist? Since evil is cousins to pain, let's look at this through C.S. Lewis's problem of pain.
If God were good, he would want his creatures to be happy, and if he were almighty, then he would be able to do as he wished. But the creatures are not happy, and therefore God either lacks goodness, or power, or both.
In this video, I'm going to try to show that it's possible for God to be wholly good and almighty, even amidst pain, i.e. why a good God would allow evil to exist. First, unlike God, we're not all wise or all-knowing, so our conceptions of good and evil, stemming from an incomplete picture of God, are likely imperfect. And this is a huge problem right off the bat because we don't rightly know what good and evil really even are. Still, we know that good and evil are mutually exclusive and they can't exist in the same space. And people think that because evil exists, God doesn't. But God can exist in a different space, and or what we think is evil may not actually be evil. As far as I can tell, God did not make evil, as many would argue based on God makes all things. God makes all things, but good and evil are not things to be made like humans or the universe are. Rather, they are the nature of things. God could not have made evil because evil is just the corruption of goodness. What is the devil, after all, but a corrupted angel? Evil is the absence of goodness and cannot be made, just as you and I cannot make darkness because darkness is just the absence of light. To make is to create something, but darkness and evil cannot be made because they are, by definition, nothing. Now, when we talk about evil, they seem to fall into two camps, natural and unnatural. The truly evil one is the ones that we can call unnatural evils. This is 9/11, Sandy Hook, Columbine, rape, murder, theft. As tragic as these things are, they can be easily explained by the fact that God has given us free will. God does not will for these things to happen, but he willed for us to have the free will that makes these evils possible. God made us beings that can choose to turn toward him and do good, or turn from him and do evil. The onus is on us. The second form of evils, which I don't think are actually evil at all, is what we might call natural evils. These are Hurricane Katrina, the Haiti earthquakes, cancer, diseases, and so on. And the reason I don't think these things are inherently evil is that if we accept that we're free-willed beings, then this world must be neutral. Because if God were controlling every aspect of this world, then we, living in this world, would no longer be free. So then you might rightly ask, well, why doesn't God do anything about it? Why does he allow it? Isn't silence condoning it? God could theoretically, though I don't really fully agree with that, eradicate suffering on earth in two ways, though many would argue that there's a third way, and I'll address that too. First, he can make it so that we can't do anything. But then we've eliminated the possibility of doing evil, and at that point we've effectively stripped ourselves of free will. Second, he can make it so that we don't want to do any wrong, and this rightly would be heaven, where people don't want any wrong, though they probably wouldn't know anything else. But in the meantime, here on earth, God would have to make us unthinking beings incapable of any real autonomous decision. The third option, which I don't think is feasible, is that fanciful wish where we say, oh, God could simply make it so there is no evil. But as we already discussed, evil is simply the corruption of goodness. So as long as there is goodness and free will, evil can exist. But there's actually a fourth way for there to be no evil. And that's precisely what's going to happen when we willingly submit ourselves to God and join with him after death. And at the end of this, we might rightly wonder, well, even if God didn't do all these things, couldn't he at least be there for us? I mean, where was God when I needed him? But he is there for us, through prayer, through others, and through a whole host of other mediums. But it's important too to remember that the teacher is always silent during the test. What we're really asking of God when we ask for there to be no suffering or evil is really one of three things. Either there's no free will, which destroys faith, there's no us, or we become transformed into beings closer to God. Now, I don't know how evil and suffering fit into God's plan, but think about the last serious tragedy you had in your life. How many people prayed for the first time in years? How many families and communities were brought closer together? Do we readily accept God's invitation to come and pray to him and talk to him? Or do we sometimes need a push? In one sense, we'll never know exactly why we suffer, just as a monkey doesn't know why it's suffering when it's being experimented on for the purpose of finding a cure. But that doesn't mean there isn't a higher purpose. And in another sense, we can be sure that suffering and evil are at least an excellent opportunity to practice our Christianity and become willfully creatures more closely aligned with God. So to wrap this video up, I don't think we're always going to be able to know why suffering happens or why evil exists in the world. But I think there are a lot of answers out there. And if we can have just a little bit of faith in God, I think at the end of the day, we'll not only see that he had a plan, but that it was very much worth it. Hey PTC, that's it for this video. What I'd ultimately like to do is base my videos off the comments and the questions that people have down below. So by all means, if you have a question or if you have a comment, please post it. And if enough people have that question too, I might make a video off of it. So as always, let's keep it simple, straightforward, with love. Have a good week, guys.